Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Transatlantic Call-In Show, where you get to talk to real live trans people about anything trans-related. So if you want to call in, the phone line is below, as well as you can also look at the web link below. And I am Josie Caballero, and I am joined by Luxander. How are you today, Luxander?
Hello, I'm doing good. I'm feeling fresh. Got my hair cut, took a shower. It's a good day for a call-in show. Ready for some good calls. I love it. We get like allies, we get trans people, we get the spicy calls. So I'm prepared. How are you doing, Josie?
I am doing good. I have been all over DC today. I had like 3 meetings and now I'm here. I was just rushing to get this show started because this is actually my favorite part of the week. So I'm
hmm
really excited to be here with everybody. So yeah. We'll go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and get started with the poll.
Yeah.
Yes. So, should trans teenagers use the bathroom of their assigned sex in school? So, we had 26% say yes and 74% say no. And when we reviewed the comments, there really wasn't anybody explaining why they said yes. I think they were just like faceless folks that were just like yes, and then silently went off. So, what do you think about this, Lex?
Yeah, I guess, many of the people who watch the show are pro-trans, so it never surprises me when we have a majority of folks responding who are taking the like pro-trans position. I also wonder if maybe the like question was maybe misread because 26% does seem like a pretty sizable chunk of like people who say like, yeah, you should be using the one of like your sex assigned at birth. Like because that the reason why we were discussing it is that like we've had 2 incidences of a trans kid using the bathroom that conservatives think they should be using and being like beat up or getting into a fight or something. So yeah, it's interesting. And some people in the comments were saying that they think that, oh, we should just abolish gendered bathrooms. And like, truly, I do think that is the solution. I think at the Kansas City airport, which is in Missouri, where they do have like a bathroom law, they have just turned the main bathrooms into gender neutral bathrooms. So you just can walk in and go either direction. I feel like that's the primary way that private businesses can kind of circumvent the need to enforce this rule. So I don't know.
No, I agree. I mean, this is like we discussed and something that puts trans people in danger
Mhm.
when this type of policy is implemented. So, it's good to see that out of the nearly 10,000 votes that most people by a large margin say absolutely not. People should be able to actually use the bathroom of their gender identity. So,
Mhm.
absolutely. So, this week's poll is: do you think the Supreme Court will uphold the 14th Amendment in Tennessee trans youth care cases? This is a very important question because it was just recently announced that the Supreme Court will be hearing a case about the fact that to uphold essentially to allow states to ban gender affirming care for minors across the board, giving an incredible amount of power to states to basically intervene in people's personal healthcare decisions when it comes to gender affirming care for people under the age of 18. It's a disastrous thing. It makes me incredibly worried with the makeup of the Supreme Court currently that we may lose this case, and putting us basically on the same course as where the UK is and the governmental power that the UK has in stopping gender affirming care. And it's terrifying to see that this is going to be taken up by this Supreme Court. What are your thoughts, Lex?
Yeah, we cover this on my show pretty frequently, like, because there are so many different cases going before the Supreme Court. And I find it so difficult because even when we have a win, like in the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, we've recently had a couple of pretty strong wins. I always feel like at the end of a video where I'm trying to be positive, I feel like, well, it's gonna go to the Supreme Court though, and we don't really know what's gonna happen with that. Like, it's a question of, are they going to support the 14th Amendment? And I think that that's like their main job. It should be anyway, is like, does this match the Bill of Rights and the Constitution? And we've already seen, we also kind of expected the 14th Amendment to protect abortion rights. And it's just now been 2 years since the Dobbs decision, where this court, I think that there's like Amy Coney Barrett is new since that decision, maybe. But this court functionally made the decision that, like, no, we're just going to make up this new concept of deeply rooted in our nation's history, which, by the way, also abortion is deeply rooted in our nation's history. Like, people in the colonial or the colonial era before the revolution were saying, like, America is an abortion from Britain. Like, it's a good thing. It's a freedom and liberty thing. So first of all, deeply ahistorical, which I find obnoxious. But yeah, it's just also a whole cloth invented concept. And I think that if that is the precedent that they're going to base this on, like, that would be bad. But then there's also a recent Supreme Court case which indicated that sexual orientation and gender identity are considered sex discrimination. I think it was like a forcing people to dress a certain way in the workplace kind of case. So I feel insane that it's I genuinely cannot possibly predict. It's like with the election. Like, I genuinely just have no idea how this is going to go down, because the obvious answer is the 14th Amendment protects people from being, like, treated differently under the law. But yeah, so it's going to be exciting in a bad way starting.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, it's like sometime between October this year and June next year. Like, that's how long their session is. So as early as this autumn, we could have a sweeping rule that, probably most likely, in my opinion, is going to take the same stance as the abortion thing, where they're like, we're going to leave it up to the individual states. And then we're going to increasingly live in, like, a divided country that way.
I will say that luckily that this is most likely going to be a late summer opinion. So
So
we're
like
going
next year.
to hear next year.
Okay.
Yeah. So right now, organizations are now doing what we call amicus briefs, which amicus briefs. Sorry. Those are basically where community and large organizations get to put in submissions to the Supreme Court to say we are for or against those type of decision making. So they haven't even heard oral arguments yet. So this is something that is probably going to be slated for late summer. That's when they usually hold the most controversial cases. So, for example, right now, they haven't announced their opinion on the Trump immunity case, which is going to be happening. Just today, they announced four opinions, one including they're going to allow the EPA to basically pollute neighboring states. So basically they were like, oh, the EPA is like, hey, maybe we should protect states downwind of polluting states. And the EPA was like, let's stop that. And then the Supreme Court's like, actually, EPA, you can't stop that. So that was a fun opinion that got dropped today. So when you talk about the controversial stuff, I would hope that we are going to see that late next year, and hope in the positive that we are able to maintain our bodily autonomy and keep our, healthcare decisions within our doctor and, patient, and not allow the politics of a politician to meddle on that. So,
I mean,
but yeah, it is.
optimistically, this will be a decision where they say, like, no, you're not allowed to restrict this right. Optimistically,
Yeah,
this could be
optimistic.
what ends all of these anti-trans care bans across the whole country. I
That's right.
personally am not optimistic about that, but like we have to acknowledge that that is equally a possibility as much as the possibility that it's just going to be states' rights kind of thing. Leave it up to the states.
Absolutely. And this is why I say elections have consequences.
True.
Like, they really do. Like, if we don't get the right result, there will be possibly an 8-1 conservative Supreme Court. Like, that is like handsmaid's territory. Like, so elections have consequences, everybody. Elections have consequences. Great. So, again, make sure you call in if you would like to ask questions. We are having the line starting to fill up now. And make sure you can also click on the link as well. And, I wanted to say yesterday I was able to attend a White House event, which was celebrating Pride. And they had the pillars of the White House currently is like in the rainbow colors. It's actually really pretty.
Hmm.
So I was like, that's nice.
That splash
That's a
of
nice
color.
like that splash of color of the White House, right? It's a perfect contrast. And so also, and Lux, I wanted to say this to you because I just found this out. I didn't find it out, but I forgot to mention it in the last time that we spoke about politics. Did you know that Kansas has a Democratic governor?
Yeah, no, I'm fully aware. When things
Okay.
go to the popular vote, like leaning toward the popular vote, and like that's happened a couple times. When I was a kid, Kathleen
Yeah.
Sebelius also, and then Brownback,
Yeah.
and then
Oh
Governor
God.
Kelly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
God.
So it's
Yeah.
lovely. Yeah, she has vetoed some of these anti-trans bills. Sometimes there is
Hmm.
a majority that can override her veto, unfortunately. So that's why the bathroom bill passed. We were very, very close to a veto majority with this most recent trans care ban for children, but one Republican woman spoke to some families and changed her vote. So it's like, which just on the hair's breadth. It's so anxiety inducing.
Yeah, I bet.
It's
I
crazy.
bet. Yes. It is wild. So yeah, I was just curious because I was like, that makes a difference because that's a 14% difference, right? Like
Yeah.
Trump won Kansas by like 14%, and then they still got a Democrat governor, which is like
Mhm. It's
so
weird. It
rare.
feels like it should be purple. Like it genuinely does feel
Yeah,
like we should be, but it just doesn't usually go that way. So it's quite confusing. But yeah.
it
And I
is
will
quite
say, before we
confusing.
continue, I want to remind
Yeah.
everybody we're not really watching the chat, but we will read out $5 super chats at the end. So if you have any
Yes.
burning comments during the show, feel free to pitch those in. They also help, contribute to keeping the line in general running, helps pay for production. And also, I know that we don't usually ask for these, but if you hit like on the stream, it will immediately help the show because it boosts it in the algorithm and it shows it to more people. So if you have not hit the like button, please do that before we start taking calls.
Yeah, agreed. And the Patreon is a thing. So if you want
True.
exclusive content, it's definitely a good thing to do. And we read off or we list the names of all the cool people who join the Patreon at the end of every show. So if you want to be one of the cool people and be on that list, Patreon's the way to do it. So great. So make sure you smash that like button. All right, let's
Yeah.
go. So we have some callers, and I wanted to take a look here. I would like to start with Matthew from Ohio. And they have a question about being skeptical about trans ideology. So let's start off strong today. Hello, Matthew. How are you?
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me back.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for coming back. So I wanted to get that conversation started again. Have you had some time to think? What are your thoughts? How do you want to start this
Yeah,
conversation
yeah.
today?
So I've been thinking a lot. This word that came up, infantilizing children, and I know I used this word last week or phrase last week, warp speed, and it looked like it was very offensive. That wasn't my intention. It was just like I saw that. That's what I felt like we were talking about when we were talking about trans children. And so now I'm looking at this word infantilizing children, and I want to know what that means or how you guys translate that in your mind.
All right, Lex, do you want to go ahead and get started on that?
Sure. I think part of the reason why we brought up the word infantilizing was also because the discussion kind of bridged out to also just talking about like women. But yeah, I think that oftentimes the sort of traditional view of family kind of doesn't acknowledge that children know things. And in particular, in this instance, that children know things about themselves. Like the idea that children can't look at mommy and daddy and see a difference and understand themselves to be more, like, feel more close to one parent or the other, or that, like, when the family gatherings happen and the women are all hanging out in the kitchen talking and the men are, watching the game in the living room, like the idea that children can't discern differences, or like that they cannot know enough to know themselves to understand where they fit in that paradigm. Like there's an assumption that, like, oh, if you were born with this, then you are that. But yeah, there's this whole like neurological aspect to it. And we are actually finding in the research that children know their gender around the age of 3 to 5. Like they have a clear understanding, as Josie was describing about her childhood, like many children know from a very young age and, ask their parents things like, when am I going to grow a pee-pee? And it's like, you're a girl, so you're not going to, but that person grows up and they are a trans man and they remain so, and they figure it out fully in their 20s or whatever. So yeah, I think children know things and that we should honor and respect that and give them a little bit more credence than we do.
Yeah, and just to add on to like,
yes,
well, I just wanted to add on to about the infantilization term, as well as when we kind of veered off into just women in general being sacred and need to be protected. It takes away the agency from women to be able to make decisions when that is put into place, right? Like that was the reasoning that women didn't have the right to vote, right? It's the idea that women can't really make the decision and they need a smarter, stronger man to make those decisions. So that is I think also a very direct example of what infantilization has looked like in this country as well. But go on, Matthew.
Yeah, and when it comes to women, I'm sure that's a whole nother conversation that I probably have in a whole nother medium,
sure.
Whatever. So right now, I really want to focus on children.
Sure.
And so, let's mention this idea of a child asking when they're going to grow certain body parts that men would have or women would have but they don't have. Is that a indication that they know their gender, or maybe that's just a curious question, or how do you move forward with something like that?
In the instances where I have known a person who had that conversation with their parent, those people have been basically like this one person was like, they had an older brother and they were born female and they were 5 years old, and they asked their mom because they saw their brother's body, like they were very close in age. So they saw their brother and they were like, well, I see that my body is different. So I understand myself to be a boy, is where this is coming from. It's not necessarily like the words that they used, but they understood themselves to be a boy, but saw that there was this physical difference. So they were like, well, everybody says boys have this part. When am I going to grow mine? Like assuming that it's something that happens to you as you age, because they just naturally see themselves that way. That's why I believe that this is like a strongly neurological phenomenon, because it seems to be a brain body map distinction. If you're familiar with the idea of amputees who have like phantom limb, it's kind of like a similar neurological phenomenon to me.
And I just want to also add too, like, just because some children are able to articulate that distinction doesn't mean that all children are like, so for example, there's a lot of kids who don't know how to say the words, or maybe they just don't have the language or distinction, and when they eventually develop larger, better vocabularies, words start coming out. So when we talk about like instances of 3 to 4 year olds being able to understand a gender identity, that doesn't mean that all 3 to 4 year olds have the ability to understand in a way and articulate it to their parents. So it comes out at all ages, right? Like sometimes, like for me, the first time that I remember saying I wish I was a girl was 8 years old, right? But I did have the feeling of wanting to be a girl for a long time. I just didn't understand what that actually was. So I think a lot of times when we talk about like the distinctions of understanding somebody at 4 years old having this distinction, it's still very uncommon for someone to have the vocabulary to express it. But what we do understand in studies is that there is a direct understanding that it is human to understand that mommy and daddy, that brother and sister, and if they have a non-binary parent, uncle, aunt, whatever, they also may understand that as well. So it's just that we don't have as many non-binary representation for young people to be able to understand. I actually know a family right now who is raising their baby as a baby, right? Where they're not even going to mark a gender on this child until they're able to grow up and say, I'm actually blah gender. And then that's the way it is. And the birth certificate is actually blank until that they will actually be able to articulate what their gender is. I think that's really cool. And I think that's most likely because the parent that I'm talking about is non-binary. So it makes a lot of sense for that child to be raised in a way that is ambiguous until that child is able to articulate, no, I'm a girl, I'm a boy, or I'm they, them, non-binary, or whatever pronouns they choose later in life. So it is a really interesting thing, and we're going to see more people that are going to grow up in that way, where they actually have more determination of what gender they're going to be assigned at birth.
Okay. Now, Josie, when you say that it was a long time you knew that you were female, or sorry, a woman or a girl, how would you classify that? Female, woman, male? How would you knew you were?
When I was a kid, it was just a girl, right? Like for me, it was like the scientific understanding of like, female, male was ambiguous, just like it kind of probably should be for kids. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, I want to be like mom, I want to be like dad, I want to be like the person, right? Or and so I think really when you're little, all you know is the socialization of gender and not the sexes, right? And I think for me, it was just like the category that is woman is probably, or girl, woman is what I understood as a child.
And was that in gender expression or in sexual phenotype?
It was gender expression only. I mean, well, I didn't understand anything else, right? Like, fortunately for me as a kid, but at the end of the day, it's like I was restricted from being able to express those things, right? I was taught that it's bad and wrong and sinful, right, that I would think of being able to express myself as a girl. So for me, it was just in the back of my mind. I can't say anything because what I didn't express in the last story is when I told my cousin at 8 years old, where we were just playing in the room randomly, I was like, "Oh, I wish I was born a girl." And my boy cousin was like, "Ew, what?" And he ran out of the room, and a big get together, and I'm telling Mexican get togethers, at least in my household, were huge. There was 35 people pretty much outside that room. And it's like, "Ew, Josie wants to be a girl." And everybody looked at me, and I'm like, "No, that's a lie. That's not true. I was joking." And then basically I kept that in myself until very, very later, like 34 years old, is when I actually started to explore that idea again. So that is what happened, because it was like a thought crime. It's like, how dare you even think that? Right. And so
Okay.
there was no opportunity for me to be able to express myself the way I wanted to.
Okay, and you said that at a long time you knew you were a girl before you made a decision at 8 years old. So when you say a long time, I'm obviously assuming this was a long time before 8 years old, 3, 4, 5. Do you remember what kind of age that was, or?
For me, all it is reflection, right? Like, I know at 34 years old, I came out as a trans woman, and then I started living my truth and going through that. All I can remember is at 8 years old, I remember saying it out loud. But I do know from my stories that my mother told me about how abusive my father was physically to me, that he knew there were other things that I was displaying that I didn't have words to.
Got it. So now, when you have a child like that may say, and think about this from my perspective of a traditional parent, and they say, kind of what Luxander was bringing up, oh, I want this body part, or I think, when am I going to grow this body part? This mindset that I have, when I just say, oh, no, you don't do that, and kind of move on with that and not give it too much attention. And would that be something that's abusive? Would that be something that's wrong? Or how would you categorize that?
I would say it's minimizing, especially because you know as an adult that we live in a world where we have plenty of evidence historically, anthropologically, like through the study of sociology and psychology. Like, we know that trans people exist and that it is a natural thing. It's a part of being human.
Well,
and like there are
I'm
other
skeptical
species
towards
that.
those ideas.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, I'm skeptical towards those ideas. I see that it's happening, and I have other reasons why I believe it's happening. So I'm not saying I don't believe that this is like a natural thing that's happening. So someone who's skeptical, when I say that, not to come from a minimizing point of view, it's just like, well, no, that's just not what's going on. And moving on, does that cause any problems? Is that something that is negative to the child? Or
No,
how does
yeah,
that go? Wouldn't that be
it
more of a
certainly
positive
causes.
thing? Or?
Yeah, it certainly causes problems. Like, if a child expresses to you as the person who they trust, like they trust you to be able to hear what they're saying and help them explore or process it, at the very minimum, you as a layperson, it might be a good thing to be like, well, maybe you would benefit from speaking to a therapist about this kind of thing, like at a certain point you can acknowledge, like, all right, I'm not an expert in this.
Just
Did you want to jump in?
That one simple statement. That one simple statement of when am I going to grow this body part? You would say, oh, maybe we should talk to a therapist about that.
No,
You feel unequipped.
People can have different responses, right? Some my response, because I've raised a small person before, is the fact that some people have penises, some people don't. Right, like, and then move on. And if that continues to be a thing, you just let the person live their lives, right? Like, I think it becomes more of an issue when you gender it. No, only boys have penises, only girls don't have penises, right? If you just say some people have penises and some people don't, right? I've been, I know some trans kids, and one like, there was, and they are still growing up, right? And they're like, and they were talking about how they have a penis, and I was like, it's okay, some girls have penises, right? And then that makes it no longer a dichotomy, because that's true, some women and girls have penises, and so it's not factual, right? It's just how we frame it is what allows the exploratory portion of that person to be able to grow, right? Because it could be just a simple, like, I don't know, why don't I have that, right? And so it could be just a kid asking questions, because that's what kids do. But I think not trying to shut it down and be like, oh no, only girls, only boys, right? Now you've gendered it, now you've sexed it, right? And a kid doesn't need to know that at that moment in time in their lives. They just need to know that some people have penises and some don't, right? And so for me, I think it's all about how you approach this situation to just allow people to grow and develop as a human.
Well, I see a little bit of inconsistency here, if I may, because you said that some children don't know that, but then they know they're ready for their gender. So how does that kind of meld together?
Well, children are people, and different people have different understandings. And I think if you take two 5-year-olds, you could probably say that one of them is more developmentally advanced than the other. Maybe one of them is more developmentally advanced in language, and maybe the other one is much better at math or spatial reasoning, right? Like it is going to depend. And, you know, it's good to teach families how to just be supportive, because children are going to come to you with questions at different ages and different kinds of questions. Like if a little girl, as you see a little girl, like she was born with a vagina and she's like, when am I going to grow a penis like my brother? You would go like, okay, well, you won't grow one. And then that child might have like an emotional reaction to that. And you kind of just have to take it one step at a time. Because obviously, like, if that kid is consistent and insistently trans and like comes through that later in life, if you come out with like, no, you're a girl, you're gonna grow boobies like mommy, like that person I was referencing, that was the conversation and how it went for them. And they had an absolute meltdown at the idea that they were gonna grow up and look like their mom. So yeah, I mean, it just depends on the kid. And like Josie was saying, like the idea is to just not shut it down, to be like, well, you won't grow this body part. Do you want to talk about how that makes you feel? And like open the door and let them know that you're not judging them or you're not shutting them down. And you're not assigning it to like one or the other, because obviously we know that these feelings can be persistent through into adulthood.
And honestly,
Yes.
I just wanted to say, and honestly, if you don't know how to interact with that kind of conversation, that's when you actually do ask for professional help and get a
Right.
pediatric psychologist involved, right? Because you want to make sure that you're giving the best support to your child at all times. So I wish we normalized more pediatric psychology in this country. I feel like a lot of times in this country, we only see a pediatric psychologist when we assume something is wrong, rather than just normalizing the understanding of like sometimes there's just a third party that is completely unbiased and just allows their kid to explore in a space, can be a better solution. So I think that's why, you know, the idea of pediatric psychology was brought up, because if it is so foreign to you, then sometimes it's good to get professional help. But go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, thank you. I'm thinking, wouldn't it be simpler to just say, no, you're not a boy, boys grow that, and you won't grow that, and then move on? Like, I don't understand why you have to like kind of figure out what type of child you're dealing with and figure out. I think it would just be more simpler, and even from a point of protecting the child, this probably goes back to infantilizing children. Protecting the child would say, you know what, even if there is some type of trans ideology, I know you were saying last talk that that is very dangerous. It's very dangerous, which I agree with. It's very dangerous to be trans in this world. So protect the child from any type of idea like that. Wouldn't that be helping them, guide them as they trust you, as you said, to even move them away from certain ideas like that?
Well,
You
the
want to be
science
open.
shows.
I was just going to
I
say.
just want to. Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, Josie. Go ahead.
No, it's just that the science shows that there's no way you can steer somebody away from not being trans. And the damage of being a trans person is when you are denied the ability to live the way you are. I have said to you already that I was born and raised in Texas. I was not given the knowledge of trans. People steered me away from being trans to the point of physical abuse. I was not given the opportunity to understand what trans was, or even the concept that I could be trans. And guess what? I'm a trans person. Nothing changed the fact that I was a trans person other than me having to suffer in silence for 34 years, which I think is ultimately the most cruel thing you can do to a human, is deny them the education and understanding that there is another option out there. The longer you delay for letting somebody explore who they are, the more harm you're putting that person in harm's way. So the idea of steering them away from being trans to protect them from being trans is not the right approach. It's about making sure that the person, if you find out that they're trans, if they discovered that they're trans, is to give them a loving environment as early as possible, so therefore they're able to weather the transphobia that exists in the world, to have a support network that allows them to stay and be who they are. Because we have seen from mental determinations of the scientific studies of everything that we know about trans, care, that is the ultimate determinant factor of preventing any type of self-harm and any type of depression, any type of those abuses that happen to trans people. So actually, it's more helpful for a trans person to let them explore that than to deny them the ability to.
And I also want to
Okay.
say that
Yes.
your child is starting a conversation with you, right? Like if they have these questions, that is the beginning of a dialogue. And if you as the parent go, no, you're a boy, and then that's the end of the conversation, like that kid is now lacking in having guidance on the subject. If you just say like, no, you're a girl, whatever, like you're conveying to them that the conversation is over and that you're not interested in exploring it further. And that if they continue to have questions about this, as many children do, then they know that you are just going to shut the conversation down. And that can have ripple effects throughout your relationship, even outside the topic of gender identity, because that kid is going to know when I'm vulnerable, when I'm feeling upset or curious or scared, that my dad is not going to be able to listen to me. So there's just no point. And then the kid is going to talk to other people, or they're going to get their ideas off the internet. And it's just, I think it's just, this is one of the things about, like, hold on. This is one of the things about the infantilization of children. You are in a partnership where you are trying to help guide a person into becoming a person, right? And there's this tendency to be dismissive and to use thought terminating cliches that end the conversation. But this is an ongoing dialogue. Your child is developing, your child is going to have questions. And you say that you're skeptical. I don't really understand what you mean when you say you're skeptical of like at least hundreds of years of well-established knowledge that being trans is just a thing that humans are, spanning across time and across cultures and things like this. And I think that you might benefit from true skepticism, which is that you actually look at the data and you try to leave your biases behind, because I don't think that you can cling to being a traditionalist and a skeptic at the same time. In my opinion, those things are mutually exclusive.
Interesting. So when this idea, 'cause I feel like this child, when the child says, hey, why am I not growing that? I feel like that's a common question children ask. So I'm not coming from the point of view like, oh, why are you asking that? Oh, they might be trans or this and that. Like I got to shut that down. That's just a common question that it's a normal question. It's an understandable question, especially if a girl's growing up with a bunch of brothers. So is
right.
that why
so
would that be?
It's the beginning of a conversation. You can say you will not grow a penis and then follow it up. How does that make you feel? Or what do you think about that? Because clearly the child has a reason for asking it, and like being curious about what motivated that question might help you understand your child better, whether they're trans or not.
Yeah,
and
there's nothing. We're not trying to say don't teach your kids about some people having penises and some people having vaginas. Like that is a very normal thing about humans that exist on the planet. And so when a kid is asking out of pure curiosity, there isn't an alarm bell that should go off. Oh my god, my kid is trans. It's just, oh, my kid is just curious about something in the world. And just being able to say that you're not going to have one, you weren't born with one. But how Lux is saying, how does that make you feel? Or some people have them like your brothers, some people don't, right? And so it's like allowing them to say, huh, and they're kids, right? The kid asks a question like, why is the sky blue? Or why is the grass green? Oh, it's green because, it's reflecting green from the sunlight. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. And then they go play with their toys, right? You don't need to have this intellectual,
Right.
philosophical
Yeah, I agree.
conversation.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, you don't need to, that's why I'm thinking. I'm like, you don't need to be like, well, what's this and what's that? Why do you ask that? It's just, no, that's what boys have and that's what girls have. And then you move on.
That's the thing. You're inserting the gender thing onto it instead of just saying some people have them and some people don't. You are imposing your gender ideology onto a child.
Yeah. Do you see what we're talking about? Because we're agreeing, but we're disagreeing on the fact that you say boys have this and girls have this. When we are telling you, and I hope you would agree, that some girls have penises and some boys have vaginas. Like, that's a real thing. Would you agree to that? So you're saying that you're saying that a trans woman, see, now we're getting to the crux of things, right? In this conversation. So a trans woman with a penis who identifies as a trans woman that has one, so you don't believe that person is a woman? Is that the crux of it?
No, not at all. Not even the slightest.
Well, there you go. You're no longer being skeptic, you are being deterministic. There's a completely different thing of what you were trying to say, right? So we have to take a step backwards, right? Rather than let's blow it out, right? Instead of talking about trans children on this particular case, because I think you and Lux and I have all gotten to the point where we have all understand what we would do in this situation. We have to now blow this back out to trans adults. So in the real world, there are trans women that exist, which a trans woman is a type of woman, and they have penises. Some of them do, right? I used to have one when I was a trans woman. I just happen to not have one now, right? It wasn't like, it's just not that complicated, right? So we have to talk about the crux of the argument, which is, if you don't believe that trans women with penises are women, why?
So I think it's a little bit complicated, and I'm kind of glad you kind of shifted there, but I might have more questions. But I'm kind of glad you shifted there, because I had a question. You said you were growing up, you said you were a girl, then maybe obviously you grew up, and then maybe you said you were a woman. Why the sex change as well? Was that related, or did it feel more comfortable, or how did that connect?
Well, for me, it's a thing called gender dysphoria, right? And honestly, because we're in this forum, I usually don't explain this because it's kind of a very personal thing, but I will in this case because this is about education and learning. So I'm okay answering this question in good faith as long as you go with me in good faith. That's what I'm going to say, okay? So I had my gender affirming surgery, which I call it my bottom surgery. I had that because I felt gender incongruence with having a penis. It was that simple. It gave me psychological distress to have one, not just to have one, but when I put on clothes and for it to come out and to be visible. Even though nobody was looking down there, nobody was caring about it, I could feel it. Right. So it started to get more like, as I went through my transition, I was more worried about my face, my hair, and all of that. But once all those things started to come together, then the dysphoria started to heighten below my belt. And then I decided to get that surgery, which is my, freedom as a person to determine what I want on my body. And I got bottom surgery to feel more comfortable with myself. It's really that simple. I know many women that don't go through bottom surgery and feel complete and whole the way they are. I'm just one of the few that decided to go ahead and go with this very invasive surgery because it was more important for me to go through that than to not.
Okay, so when it comes to this idea of some women have penises and some women don't, when you identified as a woman, wasn't that normal to you? Like, okay, so some women have penises, and that's what I am, a woman with a penis, and that's just what it is. Why are you saying that the gender dysphoria caused confusion in that? Can you explain that a little bit more?
Well, I wasn't confused. I just knew that I wanted a vagina. Like that's what it was. I wanted my body to conform to that particular thing, but I didn't see myself less of a woman before I had the surgery. It had nothing to do with my womanhood. My penis, my womanhood doesn't come from between my legs. My womanhood comes from inside of my head, right? And the only reason I got my bottom surgery was because I wanted to feel better when I looked in the mirror. Like that's really it. And so for me, it's like some people don't have this for it, and I respect all people with any type of genitalia that they choose to have or not have. Like that's really what it comes down to. So I don't think my choice of getting bottom surgery negates the fact that some women have penises and some women don't.
It's that brain
So,
body map distinction that I mentioned earlier, Matthew. Like that people, like some trans people seem to be born with an understanding of their body neurologically that does not match their external phenotype, which is why you have 5-year-olds asking, when am I going to grow a penis? Because their brain expects them to have one and they just don't.
mm-hmm. That's what I'm getting at, because if your brain is that biological organ as well, and your brain is telling you that you're girl or female, and we talked about this in the first conversation we had about gender and sex, Luxander, being really tied into each other. So somebody has a brain, and that brain tells them that they're a girl or a woman, and not only that, that brain reflects, hey, look, your body parts are supposed to change as well, that you're supposed to have a vagina because you think you feel, or your brain tells you you're a girl.
No.
So
no.
Okay.
I don't believe that at all. Like that's not your determination to be able to have that conversation. Like at the end of the day, we're not talking to minors about changing their biology, like not their biology, but their surgical care. We're talking about making sure they live comfortably.
We moved away from
I must have
minors.
misunderstood you.
Yeah. I'm talking more about for adults. So we're moving away from minors for a bit. I think what you said is okay. I wouldn't want to stay there, but I understand where you're going, and that's fine. Yeah. So we're moving away from minors. You have an adult with a brain that says their biological organ says that you're supposed to have a vagina. Because they also feel like they're a woman. Is that what I'm understanding? You feel like you're a woman.
Some do, some don't. Some do and some don't. It's not deterministic of their womanhood, right? Like I said before, my womanhood or your manhood doesn't end and begin in between your legs, right? It's really about how you perceive, like, the idea that there is like this biological thing inside of my body that is like, I need to have a vagina. It's not that. It's about the fact that I preferred to have had a vagina. That's it, right? It's not as complex as you think that you're making it out to be. In reality, and we're going to go back to this to the statement because I don't want to get away from it, is why do you believe that women with penises are not women? I want an answer to that question.
Because they're not. I don't know how it fits, but they're men.
Hey Matthew, can you do me a quick favor? Can you define a woman for me, please?
Adult human female.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, Lux.
You're taking this position. And again, this is not in line with the research. It's not in line with historical anthropological fact. You are asserting a position that to be a woman is to be female. Now, can you define female for me, please?
Somebody with large gametes, somebody with a vagina.
Okay. So you're doing the thing where like, it's like define a chair. And like there is no single definition that actually is going to include all the people you mean to include and disinclude all the people you mean to disinclude. Like there are women who are born with internal testicles. They're intersex women who I know of one intersex person who their parents had a vaginoplasty performed on them when they were 11 years old because they didn't have enough depth, and they had a clitorectomy on their quote too large clitoris when they were a kid. So like this, like you're doing the literal turf thing where you're just like making this assertion that is not going to include all the people you mean for it to include, and you don't have the ability to maintain that and also be intellectually honest. Go ahead, Josie.
And Matthew, I want to say this. I want to ask you a really simple. I want to ask you a really simple yes or no question. Okay, all I want is a yes and no. Right?
Yes.
A black woman, a redheaded woman. Okay, I'm going to start again. Right? A black woman, a redheaded woman, a trans woman, and a cis woman. Would you agree that all those are types of women?
No.
Okay.
Do you think an intersex woman who is born with testicles is a woman? Internal testicles, like gonads inside her body instead of ovaries. She is internal testicles. Is she a woman?
Not necessarily. That would be an intersex person.
Okay.
Okay.
So do you think that maybe trans people's bodies could be a type of intersex bodies?
Yeah. I would say more something like that, more like a eunuch or something like that.
Okay. Do you not understand that like there are people who are born with internal testicles who don't know it until they're older, and they grow up as girls, they live their life as women, they date heterosexually. Yeah, like you realize that like womanhood is like a separate construct. Like sex itself is a construct because we've decided that certain gametes equals female. Like we put that label on it, and we decided that somewhere on the spectrum in between these set of features and this other set of features, we're going to label these male, female, and intersex, right? But like most people's gender and the way that they operate in the world doesn't really have much to do with that, or that their understanding of that develops separately.
Okay.
Does that kind of make sense to you? Because like it's the bioessentialist conflation is like the thing that I run into problems with here.
I think there are biological anomalies, 100%. And I just want to come back to the idea of this brain thing. I feel like we were getting somewhere with that, because you were saying that, and I'm not referring necessarily to children, but I'm just using it as an example. The little girl says, "Why didn't I go to penis like my brother?" And then this is kind of the leaning toward, or at least leaning on the glass of maybe trans ideology, or I don't know the words, but just transitioning.
Trans identity, maybe, because a child does not have an ideology, and most trans people don't have an ideology. Like trans people exist because we have this like preference. Like I think Josie would call it a preference for some people, and it's like more severe for some people than others. Sorry, go ahead, Josie.
Yeah, I just want to ask you this, Matthew. Do trans people exist?
Yeah, I would say these people exist.
Okay, so if a trans woman exists, is she living their lives as a man or a woman?
I would say they're presenting as a woman, but I wouldn't say that makes them a woman.
I'm not saying,
but they're living their life as a woman. Like that's the question. Is she living her life as a woman or a man?
I would say they're trying, but I don't think it's working well.
Trying? Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So if I was walking down the street, you'd be like, "Hello, sir."
No, I probably wouldn't say hello, sir.
Okay, what would you say?
I know. If I know you, okay, I'll give an example. I remember when I was a kid, I was working at a grocery store, and there was a guy. This was way back in the day where it was just very different. And there was a guy. He was dressed as a woman, and I was just finished scanning it, and I said, "Thank you, sir. Take care, sir." And totally just naturally. I wasn't trying
Sure.
to, and you know,
Sure.
I'm a teenager.
So Matthew, I'm not talking about a mistake. I'm not talking about any of those things. You know I'm a trans person. I'm walking down the street. It's like, "Oh yeah, it's Josie from The Line." Are you going to say because you know I'm trans, "Sir"?
I'm not gonna bother you like that. I'll just be like, "Hey Josie, how's it going?"
But you would say, "Hey Josie," but you would never call me ma'am?
No, I wouldn't do that.
Okay, so now we're getting to the crux of the reality of the situation, okay? Because at the end of the day, you know, we've been trying to have this really good faith conversation with you, Matthew, and I wish you started here instead of going around the bend around trans kids, because really the conversation is about why you believe that women that are living their everyday lives, people who are living their everyday lives, trans men, non-binary people who are living as the category of woman or man or non-binary don't exist in your eyes. And the reality is, when I asked you the question, the difference between if a black woman, a redheaded woman, a trans woman, and a cis woman are a categorical thing of woman, you said no. So what is the category of woman then outside of the sex definition that you gave? Because essentially what you're telling me is that there isn't a difference between gender and sex. Do you believe there's a difference between gender and sex?
I think there's a difference, but as we talked about last, when I have a conversation with Luxander, I feel like they're very interconnected, almost inseparable.
They're interconnected, but are they different? Is what I'm asking. Are they separable?
No, I would say they're not. That's why I said they're not inseparable.
So do you have gender with somebody, or do you have sex with somebody?
Well, we're talking about an act, so I would say,
I'm talking about the word, because you don't believe they're different. So tell me vocabulary if they are inseparable words.
Sorry, my mistake. I thought you meant
so there is a difference. So there is a difference.
Yeah, two different. Yeah.
Okay, they're two different words for why. Why are they two different words, Matthew? Why are they two different words if they're not? If they're this?
Yeah.
But the definition, which is gender, which is somebody who lives a certain way versus somebody who was sex assigned a certain way. So the reality is, we're trying to be good faith with you, Matthew, but you just said that there isn't a difference between gender and sex, and now you're saying there is a difference between gender and sex because of definitions. And you wanted to play definitions games with me, saying what a woman is an adult human female. So I'm playing definitions with you. The fact that gender and sex have two different definitions, it shows that there is a complete distinctive definitional difference between the two things, which I am using your words, that there is a definition for woman, so there's a definition for gender, and there's a definition for sex, meaning that they are two different things. So if you use the dictionary, that trans women, cis women, black women, and redheaded women are all a category of a gender, which is woman. Would you agree with that?
All a category of a gender?
Wow. The gender of woman.
Well, I guess for me, going back.
No, answer the question. No, answer the question. You're being bad faith now. I was good faith with you, and I talked to you about one of the most intimate things I did in my life, which is my bottom surgery. I ask you to give me the same type of respect that I have given you. Is a black woman, a redhead woman, a trans woman, and a cis woman, are they all in the same category of gender of woman? Yes or no?
No.
So therefore gender and sex is the same to you.
Pardon?
So therefore gender and sex are the same to you.
No, I wouldn't say they're the same thing. I would say
no, so you are now inconsistent. Matthew, we've spent a lot of time with you. We've spent a lot of time with you, and I had high hopes for this call, you know, and you're getting the spicy Josie, and not many people get the spicy Josie, because I have been giving you so much patience, so much love, so much care, and so much good faith that I actually thought that you were going to come into this conversation honestly. But you have now said twice that there is no difference between sex and gender, and I have defined it for you in several different ways to show you that there is a difference in gender and sex. So until you are able to acknowledge the reality. No, it's not disagreement. It's
I'm not coming in bad faith.
No, you're not. No. There's not a disagreement when you have a logical misunderstanding of the fact that gender and sex are different. And until you can come up to the conclusion of the reality of the world.
I'll grant
But
maybe that I have a
there's
misunderstanding.
a misunderstanding
Pardon?
about logic, which is the fundamental part of this conversation, which is the fact that there is a difference between sex and gender, allows us to continue to move forward in this conversation. But if you do not believe that there's a difference between gender and sex, it's impossible for us to move forward in this conversation with good faith, because your logic is broken. And if you have broken logic, then there's an impossibility for us to move on in this conversation about gender and sex when we are talking about gender and sex this entire time, but the framework of what your understanding is completely debunked from the fact that there is a difference between gender and sex. That is not just a disagreement, that is just a complete impasse. Do you understand the difference between that?
Yeah, I would say perhaps my logic is broken, but I did have a question that I feel like that would help fix that, if that makes sense. And that's kind of where I was wanting to get at, where we were talking about the brain.
Fix my understanding? Fix my understanding between the difference between sex and... So are you going to... So I'm going to give you one chance, Matthew. One chance, okay?
Okay.
I want you to work out this thing you're about to say. And if you do not come up with the logic that there's a difference between sex and gender, I'm gonna say this conversation is over and thank you for calling in. Does that make sense? Is that fair?
I mean, this is your show. Totally fair. So,
okay.
And this question is also for Luxander as well, because I think they brought that up. So you have the brain, and I'm only bringing the child up because I heard this idea. The child says, "Why didn't I grow a penis like my brother?" Right? And is their brain telling them that? That brain state, that neurological state, is that telling them that because they feel like they are a male or a boy, that they should also grow a penis?
In this particular example of the person who I was discussing, that seemed to be the motivation, was that they understood themselves neurologically to be trans, and they grew up and they are a trans man.
Sorry to interrupt you, Lux. How does that
does that question clarify anything?
Does it clarify that there's a difference between sex and gender? Because if not, we're going to have to move on to another call.
It could. I'm not sure. That's why we're having the conversation.
Right. Okay. So I'm gonna say something real quick. And I'm going to say something, and then we're probably going to need to wrap this up because Josie needs to get off of here in like an hour and a half. Okay. The brain is an organ of sex. The brain informs your understanding of your sex. Your brain is part of what your sex is. So if you want to, if you want to draw like a super close distinction, or if you want to draw no distinction between a woman and a female, like I think again, like Josie said, we're just at an impasse with that because like there is no arguing with you. You have set an ideological standpoint that is not open to change. You are not a skeptic on this topic at the very minimum. But if you could accept perhaps that the brain is an organ of sex and that like gender is the neurological or psychological understanding of our sex, then I could accept if we came to an agreement that trans people are one of many variations of intersex human beings who then live their lives with different gender roles as they get older. Like, I think that we might have to just leave it there for now.
Yeah. I think we're leaning. I think we're leaning closer to what you're saying, Luxander, that the brain tells you what's going on in the sex aspect, but there's also that gender also kind of involves the brain as well. So, I from what I understand, I do believe in intersex. I do believe in eunuchs and stuff like that, and that's kind of where it lies for me in my mind. If that makes sense.
So Matthew, we're gonna move on, but I want you to really seriously think about why I am saying a black woman, a red-haired woman, and a trans woman and a cis woman are all in the category of gendered women, right? And think about the categorization of how society looks at like gender as far as women and men and non-binary people, because until you can see that, there's just no way we're going to be able to convince you that trans people and trans children exist and need trans healthcare, because that's really what
So
this was supposedly be about. So if you want
it
to
seems
call in
to me that you
again,
want
I'm
me
going to
to
be
agree
here
with.
next week. What was that?
It seems to me that you want me to agree with you, and I'm just not there yet. I don't think I can agree with you, and I don't think that's a good faith argument to say, well, agree with me so that we can move forward. I think we're at a really good space, especially what Luxander brought up. I would love to continue the conversation.
Yeah, and I will
Well,
be
I
here
said think
throughout
about
July as
that.
well. So you're welcome to call
Same.
back
Okay.
again. And I
Yeah,
have
call
I have
back
my
again.
own show where I stream twice a week. If you want to come in and bother me, that's also fine. But like I do want you to consider, Matthew, that you are operating from the bioessentialist position that, as far as I can tell, it's almost impossible to argue people out of. And as a skeptic, I would hope that your values align with being open to changing your mind when you are confronted with new information. And that's all I have to say for you today.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for the call, Matthew. Have a great day, and
Yep.
call in again.
Thank you.
If you're ready. Okay. All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
I
Well,
just wish
you were
people
there
would
for the
get to the
first time
point.
now. I know. Like, what is that? 3 episodes? 3 episodes? And we finally got to the point where like women are not women if they have penises, and
Yeah.
that there is no such thing as a category of women that involves
That's
trans
what we
women.
mean when we say bad faith. Like, you're having a conversation about the idea of trans children, but you're operating from the position where you just fundamentally believe that trans women aren't women. Like, that's what we mean by bad faith. It would be a good faith
Yeah.
argument if you started there and started with, I believe that large gamete producers are women. Like, okay, you just don't use words correctly, is what it comes down to. You use the words wrong.
Yeah.
Lord have mercy. Let's go to a new
Anyways.
caller. Hit the
Let's
like
go to
button,
a
everybody.
new caller. We're gonna go, like button,
We'll read them out
everybody.
at the end.
If you like spicy Josie, leave a super chat and let me know, because you got to see it for the first time on the show. I think this is the first time I actually raised my voice and
You got
heated.
mad.
Anyways, let's hear from Chase from California. How are you, Chase? I hope you were entertained.
I was very entertained. I was the same way as him a few years back, so I have a little empathy.
Fair.
We're all on our journeys.
Fair. We
What do you want to talk
are
to us
on
about
our
today,
journeys.
Chase?
Sorry, I need to turn my TV off because the lag. It's muted, but the lag was just driving me bonkers.
Yeah.
Can I give you like a 60-second pre-ramble and then I'll get to the point?
Sure.
I was raised in a cult where I wasn't allowed to do further education. I wasn't allowed to obviously know homosexuality, as they said it, in any means. And so I left that about 3 years ago. And over the last year and a half, I started to self-identify as non-binary, and like to this day, I've only told like maybe 10 people. But I find like I invalidate myself a lot. I'll be like my partner, when she calls me her man, I like it. But then other times, like if someone else calls me a man, I'm like, ugh, gross. And like I'll refer to myself as a man, and then if the next person thereafter refers to me as a man, then I'm like, ew, gross, or just like really uncomfortable. It'll make my skin crawl, and I don't really know what it is. If like sometimes I feel like I'm making it up. I don't think that's the case, but I'm trying to like work through that. And the last like 3 months, it's really been on my mind like every day. So I was wondering if you guys had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm just going to assert that being non-binary is pretty confusing. And that's like, I think it's a longer process sometimes because there's not like a clear, like point A to point B. Like there's these certain set of expectations, like, I didn't necessarily have that experience when I was a kid of like, I fit in cleanly with either the women or the men. And I would say, part of the discomfort, I think, is the difference between someone you know and love who honors and affirms your gender and you know that, versus someone you don't know who is seeing you in the broader context of like, this is what men are like, But also, I think that sometimes with non-binary people, it can depend on context. Like, I used to really, really, really want to be perceived as masculine in public, and I don't care so much about that anymore. But I really like it when my partner calls me a good girl, even though I firmly reject womanhood. It's like, in that context, that's what I find sexy, or like that's what I find affirming. So yeah, I would say, don't beat yourself up too much. Like, certain things are going to feel comfortable in certain contexts, and it's all like a process of exploration. And I think that feeling that you have of like, what if I'm faking it? Or like, what if I'm not really trans? Or what if I'm not really non-binary? Cis people wouldn't be upset by that. Like, I've had this before where I'm like, but what if I'm not? And it's like, well, I know that I am trans because I'm really fucking upset by the idea that I'm not trans. So yeah,
Or not
I
cis.
can't say where exactly. Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Josie.
You said not trans. You're definitely trans, Lux.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I think of
Hate to
myself
break
as
it
a
to you
not
on this
trans
show.
person, yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely there. So
Yeah.
for sure,
Yeah.
just be open to listening to yourself is one of the biggest things.
Yeah.
And like, don't beat yourself up about it because feelings are dumb sometimes. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
absolutely.
feel like-
And yeah, go ahead, Chase, please.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, I feel like within my immediate circle, like obviously none of my family talks to me because it's part of a cult, but I've been adopted by or essentially adopted by an older lesbian couple that I just adore, and they respect everything about me. My partner respects everything about me, but then I have like some friends that I grew up with that just don't get it, and I don't know how to like talk to them about it, and I don't know how to like express myself. I don't know if you guys have any resources on how to like go through that. I don't have the resources right now to go to therapy. So I've just discovered this platform like 2 weeks ago, and I've been finding it pretty invaluable. But I don't know if you guys have any resources that I might be able to look into on kind of like exploring these types of topics.
I mean,
Let's
I think
go ahead.
that,
You're
like,
the non-binary person here, so I
Yeah. Like Reddit is a public forum, and there's lots of different subreddits. There's like the r/non-binary subreddit, which I am banned from, and I can't remember why. But there are lots of different groups online, and if you find any trans YouTubers that you really like, a lot of them have associated Discord communities where you can chat with people. I always recommend that people try different things as far as like their gender expression, to the extent that you can do so safely, obviously. Like, as like if you're assigned male at birth, then maybe black nail polish can be considered like a fashion thing that will not necessarily call your gender into question. And like little things like accessorizing, like, maybe try clip-on earrings, or just try dressing in a different way, or styling your hair a different way. This is such a wonderful open opportunity to find yourself, and not even in the context of gender, but like, do I prefer having long hair, or am I overheating and I need to have my sides of my head shaved? It's such a wonderful opportunity. And I think that gets missed a lot of the time because we have so much anxiety about it.
I've been, like I said, this has been like a 1.5-year process for me. And over the last 6 months, I've been exploring that a lot. I've been growing out my hair. I love it. I think it's beautiful. Makes me feel really pretty. I've been painting my nails, all sorts of different colors. Usually my partner actually paints my nails more than I do. But And then I've been getting ear piercings and nose piercings and stuff, and it's been making me feel a lot more in line, because I do prefer like the masculine, like I love my beard and stuff like that, but the accessorizing, a little bit more flamboyant dress has been really resonating with me. One other thing I wanted to ask about was kind of like what I can't remember which of you said it, but I do the same thing where I catch myself when I'm with strangers, talking more masculine, more deep, using more terms that I don't use in my daily vernacular anymore. And then I get myself upset. Why do you think that is?
It's called code switching. You're just using a different dialect, basically, in certain groups of people. I do kind of similar things. Like when I was an electrician, I was definitely code switching to using like a more southern kind of touch to my accent. I'm from Kansas, so like it's not completely foreign. My grandma says the wash machine. So I think, code switching is totally normal. You do it to be safe in one regard, but you also do it to fit in. Autistic people do it a lot, where you're like mirroring the other people you're speaking to. Right. Yeah. So I think it's just a context thing. And if you want to change it, you totally can. But I also don't think it's something you should beat yourself up for.
Yeah, and Chase, also, don't discount your local LGBTQ community center, right? There are so many groups. Sometimes there's like trans-oriented groups, or sometimes there's just like there's so much interest that there will actually be non-binary groups. And meeting other trans people that have like experienced in person can do an amazing amount of work for you, and all of that stuff is free. It was the first thing I did before I actually saw a therapist, was actually go to my local LGBTQ center and do a trans support group. And it was so healing and powerful, because I was able to see trans people in all different points of their transition, and you'll be able to make friends there, and you'll be able to have that experience. And I think there's something you can't replicate when you're in that type of group. Sometimes they're just like a picnic. Sometimes it's like a movie night, or sometimes it's a full circle with a counselor there that actually has the ability to facilitate a space and talk about really heavy topics. So please, I would highly recommend that you go and check out your local LGBTQ community center to see what types of groups are available, or any types of programs that you can go and meet other people in your shoes locally.
Okay. I've been thinking about doing something like that. I have this internal issue with that, because I almost feel like guilty, like I don't deserve to do that, because when I was in the religion I used to be in, I was so evil to the community, and I almost feel like I don't deserve to be part of the community because of how kind of awful I was. Not in person. I never really bullied anyone. I was a little mean to one kid in school, but toxically online for sure. And
I come from a religious background, conservative from Texas, right? Like what we call that is internalized transphobia and internalized homophobia. And a lot of us are, and why we call it internalized is because it's put into you, even though naturally you probably wouldn't have been that way. And it comes out in the worst ways. So you are not guilty, right, in that world, because you were dealing with the coping mechanisms that you felt safe with, and a lot of us had to deal with that. And so never feel that you don't belong, because you're part of the community, Chase. We all come from different points in our lives, and if you're not cis, you belong here. You belong in that space, because this is where you heal, right? This is where you can come to terms with those feelings in a place where it's safe for you to combat those feelings head on and actually do some really do some real good to yourself, because you deserve it too. You deserve it. You do. And you deserve to have friends, and you deserve to be a part of the community, and we are there to give you a hug. So just know that you are not alone, and you deserve love just like everybody else, and we all come from different points of different parts of the community. So yeah, go. You should.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Getting me a little
Yeah.
emotional. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, it's true. Don't beat yourself up. You're a beautiful person.
Okay.
You got beautiful person with beautiful hair and pretty nails. That's what I know so far.
I love
Yeah.
it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Chase. We'll go on
Thank
and
you.
move to the next caller unless you have something else.
Yeah, just one last question, just on like generalized
Yeah.
terms. Because my preference is only women. When people ask me if I'm straight, I kind of don't know what to say, because I'm like, yeah, I'm straight, but sometimes I'm a woman. So am I
You're queer.
gay? I don't really. Just queer.
You're queer.
Okay, that's
just
so
queer.
easy.
It's fine.
It is the easiest thing to do.
It is the easiest thing. You're just queer. It's okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
I think I'm just a little heady sometimes, and I think I try to like, I overthink things, and I feel like I need to put things in boxes, and that's kind of the opposite of what we need to do in the community, huh? So I that makes sense.
Yeah, we're
Thank
all
you.
queer here.
I think that's all
It's
I
all
had.
fine. Awesome. You're
All
great.
right.
Awesome.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Chase. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye. You too.
Bye.
Awesome. That was good. That was a call we needed after the last one. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, palate cleanser.
Yeah, good palate cleanser. And I hope Chase finds a great community group to go and be pretty in front of. Like, it's such a good feeling. Great. So we'll just go down the list, and we have Max from Illinois. Hello, Max. How are you?
Hello. How are you? I'm good.
Good. What would you like to discuss today?
Yeah, my question was, if schools do institute this policy that trans people can go to the gender that they identify as, how do you keep, people who just want to go to different, when they don't identify as that gender? Like, how do you separate that?
I mean, my question is why we need to. I have been in a women's restroom before and had a man just mistakenly walk in there, go pee, wash his hands, and walk out, and it was not a problem for anybody. So if we're talking about people who are just entering the bathroom to use the bathroom, my biggest question is like, why do we need to have distinct rules about who's allowed to use which bathroom when it's like a non-harmful situation? Because assault is illegal anyway, and there are plenty of instances where adult men assault young boys in the men's restroom, but like the question of, oh, are boys' bathrooms a bad thing doesn't come up. Like, we're like, should men be allowed in boys' bathrooms? Like, it's just not a question.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking from... Yeah. I mean, I understand that point of view, but what about like all these creeps and sexual offenders, all the pedophiles and stuff?
Well, they already exist. They already exist,
exactly.
And they will go into the bathroom to cause harm. They're causing harm regardless of what they identify as, right? And that's the reality. It's not like and like Lux said, like assault and sexual assault and all the things that you just said are all already crimes and are illegal. If somebody has intent to do harm, their gender identity doesn't give them a free pass to commit those type of violence on another human. So for me, it's like we just don't have any incidences where somebody's like, "Oh, I was assaulting that woman because I identify as a woman. That's okay, right?" Like, no, this isn't a thing that is happening. So for me, it's like deviant people exist in society, but that doesn't give them a pass just because they identify as trans. Does that make sense, Max?
Yeah, and I agree. Of course, I think everything you said is correct. But when I see like a guy going into the girls' bathroom, especially if they don't have like a kid that they need to accompany, then that's like a way more different level of like alertness than, for example,
I have
someone who's like.
I want to propose to you a question here, Max. So, typically we hear this argument in opposition to trans people being able to use the bathroom of their preferred gender, right? And the solution to that problem, the quote unquote problem across this nation is like, okay, so I live in Kansas. I was born here. And like now there's this legal requirement where you're supposed to use the bathroom that you were assigned at birth, right? But there are very masculine transgender men who were born with a vagina, but now they have a big beard and they wear a cowboy hat and they, that got their deep voice. What is stopping, let's say in Kansas where I live, what is stopping a cisgender man who is a predator from just saying he has a vagina so that he can enter the women's bathroom?
I don't understand the question. Isn't like that is
right.
my point. Like if a guy has.
So let me clarify for you. What you seem to be saying is what is stopping a man from saying he's a woman in the idea being that he's a trans woman from going into a woman's bathroom to be creepy. But what I'm saying is, even when you set up a legal framework that says you are required to use the bathroom of the sex you were born as, there is no mechanism that is stopping that same man from just saying he was born with a vagina and that he is now legally required to use that restroom. Like what you seem to have a problem with is not self-identification. Sorry, what?
I said I'm not, like, my point of view is that, you should go to the bathroom that you appear as. If you look feminine enough, that's like more than 50% of people would say you're a woman, then you can use the women's bathroom.
What about a butch lesbian that you just don't know, right? Like a person who identifies as a woman, right? A person who assigns who is a woman's been a woman her whole life, and she's just very butch. And are you saying that she deserves to go to the male bathroom too, because she looks like a man?
Well, I don't think like a butch lesbian necessarily looks like a man. I think you can.
I've seen it happen. Hold on. I have seen, like, I was working at a gas station once at a truck stop, and a butch lesbian with very short hair walked into the women's restroom, and one of my coworkers went and followed her into the bathroom to say, "Sir, this is a women's restroom." And I could hear the woman from the inside of the restroom say, "I'm a female." So, like, who is policing this? Who is deciding what you look like? I'm androgynous and I wear a mask everywhere I go because COVID is still very much a thing. So people kind of have to guess based on what I'm dressed as. Like, what is the problem with a person? Like, what's the problem with the mannish looking lesbian using the women's bathroom? Like, to me, the problem is the fact that my coworker thought that it was appropriate to follow someone into the bathroom to tell them that they were in the wrong space. Like, I'm not really seeing what the problem is with the idea of like people just going in and using the restroom and then going about their business for the rest of the day, Like, what is the actual problem?
It's that if, like as you said, deviants, they can go into the bathroom and make it will be easier for them to,
they're already. So what are you saying in that scenario? What you're saying in that scenario, that Lux's coworker was correct in chasing down a cis lesbian because she looked more man than woman to that coworker's point of view. So what you're saying, Max, was that the correct and appropriate thing to do to protect the women in that bathroom?
Based on the information, in my opinion, like based on the information they had, maybe. Like, I'm not saying like in all the cases.
So you think that harassing people who are gender nonconforming is the right thing to do?
How is it well, okay, I don't think it's harassment necessarily.
Following someone into the bathroom to tell them that they're in the wrong space. Like, this person was already in the stall, sitting down to go pee. Like, I don't really know how to explain to you that that's harassment if you don't understand already, like, that like the gender nonconforming person is aware that people might bother them and that they have to like decide whether or not to even use public restrooms because of this question. You know, like the burden of this ends up being mostly on older cis women who like they don't have as much estrogen in their bodies, or like lesbian butch women. You know, when you put this rule in place, when you put this rule in place, it's mostly impacting normal cisgender women who are not trans and they're not doing anything wrong or weird. Like, how can you explain how having like a gender expression requirement is going to protect anybody or is going to stop people from being creepy? Because again, as I already said, cisgender men assault young boys in the boys' bathroom. What is the solution to that problem?
So to your first question, in my opinion, at least, it's that, you know, a woman is weaker than a man usually. So, like, if people who appear as women, they can go to women's bathroom, then, you know, you can maybe, like, fight back or something. And to your second question, I mean, I don't think that, you know, there isn't really a solution other than someone intervening. If you're talking about some guy, like a pedophile assaulting, like, a boy in a bathroom, yeah, there isn't a solution to that.
So Max,
maybe they
like,
can carry a gun. I don't know.
do you see that the solution that you're proposing, which is a gender expression rule that says if you express as man, you express as woman, you go to that bathroom that you more express as, actually does nothing to solve the problem that you're talking about? Because at the end of the day, when you're going to a gas station bathroom, like, you're not going to have somebody guarding that bathroom. It doesn't do anything except harass people. Butch lesbians are the most targeted when these type of bills that do exist in certain states and have tried to been passed in certain states are the ones that are getting assaulted, harassed, or worse. And it's not solving any problem because, like we said already, assaulting somebody in the bathroom, regardless of their gender, is already a crime. Like, that's what it already is. And so I just don't see any possible way to solve the problem that you came in here talking about with a gender expression law, because it actually makes people's lives worse.
Well, in my opinion, it does solve a problem because it reduces, like, chances of it happening. You know, like,
it doesn't. That's not true, Max. That is factually, empirically not true. Because what we have noticed is, and we just saw this the other day, where a trans teenager went into the boys' bathroom and got her teeth knocked out. We had a trans man who was a teenager that went to a girl's bathroom and died after a horrible beating. Okay, so what we are seeing is that these laws actually cause more harm and death and violence than the problem that already exists, which is already a crime. Like, empirically, you may feel.
It doesn't make sense to me. Why would it doesn't make sense to me why someone would beat up, like, a female or a girl who goes into a men's bathroom? Like, like, that's not a, like, no one is.
And why does it make more sense? Why does it make more sense that if a man goes into a girl's bathroom, that would happen then? If it doesn't make sense
they're
that a
physically
trans
stronger.
girl going into a man's bathroom is going to get her assaulted and beaten, why does the opposite not true either? More true. Like, do you realize that we are giving you empirical evidence, like anecdotal evidence in this case, about these things actually happening? And you're like, no, that's not true. The opposite is happening. When we just said empirically that's not actually true.
But what I'm saying is, okay, in the case of this, I guess, female going to a boy's bathroom,
A trans woman,
it's
trans woman going
okay,
into
sure,
a man's
sure.
bathroom.
Yeah, a trans woman going to a man's bathroom. There isn't like any threat there. It's not like a trans woman can rape someone. A trans woman can rape a guy, right?
What?
on a-
Like, okay, Max.
First of all,
Come
Max,
on.
I think you just fundamentally don't understand the conversation
Yeah,
that we're having right now.
yeah, I
But
don't think
also,
so
like,
either.
you're coming at this from the position that women are weak and they need to be protected. Why is it always a man calling in on this show to talk to me about how women feel in the bathroom? Like, why are you paternalistically asserting that women are just going to be like, that like for our entire lives combined, all three of us in this conversation, all of our lifetimes combined, trans people have been able to use the bathroom that they want to use. It only became illegal for the very first time in 2016 in North Carolina. There has never been an epidemic of harm against women in bathrooms because trans people exist and because men who are bad actors anyway are just saying that they're trans in order to use the bathroom, Like, maybe
I agree
women
with you
don't.
there. I think
No. Maybe women don't give a shit about whether trans women are using the bathroom with them. And like, why are you as a man like infantilizing them and pretending like they're incapable of carrying pepper spray on them if someone decides to be creepy to them in public? Like, why are you inserting yourself into a conversation that has literally nothing to do with you?
Okay, so I mean, I think just in general, women are like more valuable than a man because they can give birth. But that's like beside the point. That like on average, like even like scientifically, like a guy is going to be always stronger than a girl because he has more muscle mass. He has more like, well, I don't know what science is, but like like if you, I know like when I look like on the street, like I can probably take on like 80%, maybe 90% of women in a fight.
I doubt that.
That's not the
I
case.
doubt that, Max. I doubt that you can beat up 80 to 90% of the entire woman population. Max, are you
Well,
like
maybe
some
if they're
like
like
UFC
trained.
fighter? Like, are you some?
No,
I'm just saying.
I'm not saying about.
I like think about what you just said. Just I want you to reback what you just said. You said that
Okay.
you could beat up 90% of women. Why are you thinking about that? Why are you sitting there thinking,
Well,
I could beat her ass, I could beat their ass, oh yeah, they would have shit on me? Like you got to think about that, Max. There's like there's something up with the fact that that there are women who do kickboxing, women who are trained fighters. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is very popular. So you're saying, so Max, are you like a trained fighter?
Well, look,
Or are you just some guy on the street?
I have a fourth. No, I have. Well, okay, I have a fourth stripe. I have fourth stripe white belt in BJJ, and whenever I roll with people in the dojo, like, like simply because like I weigh 200 pounds, I bench 225. Most guys like I talk to many of my
Babe, that tells me that you're top heavy and that I'm going to take out your kneecaps. Like, that tells me that you're going to go down easy, right? Has any woman in your life, hold on. Has any woman in your life ever expressed a concern about a trans person in the bathroom?
Well, I mean, I didn't ask them. I don't really talk.
Okay, this is a yes or no question. Is the answer no? The answer is no?
No, it's the answer is no.
Okay,
no.
Then this is a non-issue. This is not a real problem. You are telling women about a problem that they need to have, and you're trying to solve it for them, even though none of the women in your life are concerned about this. And in fact, the majority of women support the rights of trans individuals to use whatever bathroom. Plenty of women wear those little I'll go with you pins saying like, I will go with a trans female into the bathroom and accompany her. Like, this is such a non-issue. It's a bogeyman. You're inventing a problem. There are almost no recorded incidences of a person pretending to be trans in order to go assault women in the bathroom. Like, this is,
Yeah,
you know
they're
that this
usually
is like a
just men.
phantom. Yeah, this is a phantom that you've invented on behalf of a
Yeah,
group that
There
you
are
don't
no
belong to.
there are no incidents now, but if this thing is like
Matt,
universal
do you
So
across
believe that trans
hypothetically,
people? Do you believe that trans people just popped out of the ground like a few years ago? Like, you do realize that trans people have been
no,
getting
I don't think
bottom surgery since the 20s, right? You do realize
what I'm
that,
saying.
like, there have been. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, what I'm saying is like, and I agree with your original one of your original thesis that if this wasn't being brought up, then this would be a non-issue. But since it is brought up, and since legislature is being like written about it, like maybe like 20 years ago it would be a non-issue, but nowadays if it's like in the law that you cannot like do anything, that if you try to like, if you feel concerned or something. Okay, basically what I'm saying is now that it is a mainstream issue, it gives more ideas to like people to exploit it for like ill-begotten gains.
So Max, let me get this straight. So you're saying that the fact that there is legislation or somebody wanting to legislate a law to a problem that doesn't exist creates the problem? Is that what you're saying?
Sort of, yeah. It kind of brings the attention to the issue where, it would have been much more productive that we didn't even
So
talk
are
about
you
it.
saying that so Max, are you saying that the reason that murders exist is because we made laws to make that illegal and it gave people ideas, let me create murder. Like, oh my God, murder is illegal. Oh my God, that sounds like a great idea. Is that what you're meaning? Is that what you say? Like, if you create a law, therefore the
No, of course
problem
not.
is existent? Well, that's what you're
No,
basically
I'm not
saying with
saying
this
that. But
logic.
what I'm saying is, up to now, people, no one was thinking like, oh, let me dress as a woman so that I can go
No, they
to
were. Have you ever seen
well,
Psycho?
I mean,
Have you ever seen the movie Psycho? It's a black and white movie where there was a person who would dress as a woman and then go kill women in the motel room. Like, that was written about in a movie, like black and white. Like, so you say that
American
that movie
Psycho?
doesn't
No,
exist? No, not American Psycho. I'm talking
no,
about Psycho. Like, the Bates Hotel. That person's whole persona was they dressed
yeah,
up as a woman and then they went and committed murder. Do
Patrick
you say
Bates.
that movie, so that movie existed and that concept existed before these laws were put into place? You know that, right?
Wait, the Patrick Bates, it's a color movie. It's called. It's not about like people going to the bathrooms. It's about like
No,
this crazy
that
guy
is
who's.
Psycho. It's called Psycho, not American Psycho. Psycho by Alfred Hitchcock. It's a black and white movie. They even made a show called The Bates Motel, and it was about a guy who had a mother issue, and would dress up as a woman and then go kill women in their bathrooms. Like the idea that that movie exists shows that it has been like a horror topic, at least back then, before any of these laws were in place. It's not a new
Well, I mean,
concept.
I didn't watch that movie, but the woman can just carry a gun if they feel unsafe. Like I don't see the
there you
problem.
go. That's the solution to the problem, Max. Let anybody use whatever bathroom they feel like it and arm women. Boom. That's the solution. Thank you. You've just come up with the BoJack Horseman solution to the problem. Arm women.
But Max, you do realize though what you're trying to say is because there's laws in place that don't to a problem that doesn't exist, now therefore there's a problem that exists. And that is just a logical, just a silly assertion. Can you agree to that? Like, it's kind of funny, right?
That yeah, it's like these laws are being discussed, and that creates a lot of like negative feelings and a lot of cuckoos, who are, want to make an issue out of a non-issue.
I think, Max, I think you need to think about the psychology of a person, right? Like the idea of like people are just sitting around just waiting for a law to pass and then get bad ideas. It's like, there's a law about that now? I'm gonna go commit that against that law. Like that's silly. It's like, we're gonna do speeding, so now people decided, you know what, speeding's a good idea because there's a law against it now. It's a silly thing to say that the law precedes the problem. Like it doesn't make sense.
Why are you bringing these analogies forward? Like
because that's the logic that you're making.
No, well, my logic is that the fact that this thing is being discussed, that just gives fuel to bigots and stuff to talk about this issue. It's like the race issue. Everyone wants to be like, stop racism, pass these laws, and then the Republican Party just uses that instead of fixing the economy.
But the hypothetical that you brought up at the beginning,
the culture wars.
Max, you are making the culture wars happen by even having this conversation in the first place. You started this conversation saying, what if a person imitates a woman and goes into the bathroom and causes assault? That's how you started it. And so you are the one that is doing the culture war because you're the one that came up with the hypothetical because some Republican made up a fake idea. Okay.
I said,
is that not what you said? Do we need to play it back?
Yes. I said, what if someone identifies as a woman? I didn't say if they look like. In fact, I think that if someone goes to put in the effort of appearing like a woman, then, whatever, they can go because statistically, the likelihood of them, doing a crime is less than someone who's just saying, oh, I'm a woman, let me just go there. Because,
I mean, Max, I hear what you're saying. I appreciate the call. We do got we only have one other caller after this. We do have one more call after this. And I do not want to just shut down the conversation, but essentially what I feel you're making the argument of is because the right wing created this bathroom panic, right? Of like, oh my gosh, there's people identifying as women and just going into bathrooms and assaulting women. You asked that exact hypothetical to us saying, what is stopping? And Lux and I actually said, this is what's stopping that. This is what's happening. This is the actual evidence. This is actually all the things. But you're kind of repeating what you said as though what we said before doesn't actually pertain to the conversation. Does that make sense? Because just because there's a culture war, you continuing to believe what their assertion is not evidence that there's an actual problem.
Okay, I'll think about it, and maybe I'll call him back in the future to further flesh out my points. Thank you for taking my call. But also, I would beat 90% of women in a fight. Just so you know, like I'm a trained fighter, and like it's not. I just want to make that clear. Okay?
I didn't mean to attack your manhood, Max. I apologize. It's just
it's very fragile.
It's very fragile. You have to beat 90% of women to be able to walk around in the world. Okay. I'm just joking with you guys. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh, the objective truth. Did he say he was a white belt? Because people in the chat are saying he was a white belt in Brazilian
He said he was a white belt with 4 stripes. Now, it depends on what martial art you're in. Like, they do them at different levels. But, like, my impression when he said that was basically, like, are you really talking yourself up big about being, like, a white belt who isn't even good enough to move up to the next level? Because you have 4 stripes, meaning you are not good enough to move up to the next level of belts.
Yeah, it's anyway. like they're like that. It's just like it's the idea of like women are so fragile that it like it's like makes it. It's like the whole idea of like men walking around thinking they can beat up like most of the women in the world is just like it's so interesting to me that like it's just like, oh, I can beat up all these women. It's like, do you not realize how badass women are? Like it's like we're not gonna go down easy. Like, you know what I mean? It's like tap. Oh, Like, it's just like,
Right.
it's like, that's not like, oh my God. It's just hilarious to me.
It's
Like,
very
I don't
silly.
know. So
Like,
it
I
is
think
very
that a
silly.
lot of people out there, like, who might, like, listen, the smaller you are, the more, okay, hold on. The smaller you are
Yeah,
in a
go for
fight,
it.
the more quickly you're going to reach for something fucked up, like taking out the other person's eyeball with your fingers, or like blowing their knee out sideways. Like, if you're small and you know that you're not going to last long in a fight, you go for something fucked up right up top.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like, it's like this like gentleman's battle between
Yeah,
it's
no, like,
like,
I will
let's
spit
go
in your face. Like,
fisticuffs. Like it's just
I'll
like,
rip your ear
it's
off, dude.
like,
Like,
yeah, exactly.
oh man.
And it's just like, that's just like one of those things where it's like it's dehumanizing, right? It's dehumanizing to think that
Yeah.
we're just gonna just fold immediately to anything. It's like no, like we're human beings and that's how we are. It's like you don't know the smallest, petite person can be so trained that they literally kill you in seconds. Like, they just get the right type of chokehold, the right type of just right twist. You don't know if they're holding something in their hand that could just slice a major artery. Like the
Right.
idea that you could just like the walk around with that level of privilege to think that I am invincible in the world. Like, what are they, like superheroes? Like, are that what men think they
Yeah.
are? They think they're like
That
some form of
people, like,
superhero.
they reduce it down to strength. Like, that's the most important thing. Like, no, being fast and having the
Yeah.
killer's instinct are the things that make the difference in the fight. I don't care how
Yeah.
strong you are. If you can't get a hold of me, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Good
Oh
Jesus
my
Christ. All
gosh.
right.
Oh my gosh. The
Let's stop talking
the
about fighting
invincibility
people.
of cis men. Oh my gosh. Men just see themselves as a Homelander. Like all
True.
men who watch, they're just Homelander, just ready to snap at any moment, just take us all out.
Hmm.
Anyways, sorry, Max, but that was hilarious. I had to go in. So, the last caller we have is Fur, or yeah, I think Fur. Is that how would you pronounce that? Lux Fur from Canada.
Yeah, for
I guess
like a
I'll
tree.
just ask. Yeah.
Fur
Hi,
like the
Fur
tree.
from
That's right.
Canada. Did I? Yeah, great, wonderful. How are you today?
I'm doing okay. How's my audio?
It
Good.
sounds perfect.
Oh gosh, being on a call with a whole bunch of people listening is really nerve-wracking. How do you people do this all the time? Oh, okay.
I
Oh
ignore all
yeah.
of them.
Yeah, yeah.
I only have a few minutes. I gotta get back to work at the top of the hour. So
Sure.
I
Oh,
was excited to see that Lux, you were on the line because this is a question that I felt like you might have some experience with. Um, I run into, and I think this is a funny question because I seriously doubt there's any kind of clean answer. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are. Um, I run into a bit of a struggle sometimes because the best pronouns for me are it and its. And that can be tough for some folks because, like, I have people who are very close to me who are also trans, and they have had the experience of those pronouns being weaponized at them or
Sure.
being used not in any kind of affirming way, but always as like a prelude to assault or violence. And so when I was working through uh, what my gender was and settling into it and finding, oh, it's this. This is the thing that feels right. This is the thing that feels best. Some folks that I care very much about really struggled with that because trying to refer to me in that way brought up all of those memories for them. And so
Yeah.
the thing that I did that felt good was to, when, in an introduction or if people asked, I would say, oh, the best pronoun for me is it, but if that's really uncomfortable for folks to use, I don't mind they either. And that was fine, and it felt like it gave people space. But what I found was that, like, I mean, suppose you have no such history. Like, it is uncomfortable if you're not used to doing it. It's kind of weird. It feels funny. It feels kind of uncomfortable. And so everyone would just call me they, and that was just what everybody did. And And that didn't feel great either, because it felt like they weren't seeing me. They weren't seeing what I was trying to say. They weren't, meeting me where I was. And so in other places, I've dropped the qualifier and just said, like, hey, the best pronoun for me is it. Please use that. And I'm trying to find, like, what is the way to honor both of these things at the same time. That there are folks that I don't want to even be dredging up their trauma every time they talk about me, but also it really does. Like that is me. That is me, and it feels, not for the same reason that people are being terrible to them, but I don't, want to litigate the whole situation every time I'm talking with somebody. And it's a paradox. It's a struggle, and I don't know how to resolve it, because it probably can't be resolved. But I thought you might have some experience with that, Lex, and I was curious what you thought.
Yeah, I will say, like, it is a familiar experience, even outside the whole it's context, for someone to have their pronouns listed as they/she, but they were assigned female at birth. And so everybody just thinks, oh, well, I'll just keep calling them she. And then that really is grating. It feels like they're not even trying to see them as they actually are. And then eventually they drop the she, and they're just like, just use they, them for me. Nobody's allowed to use she anymore. You abused the permission, and now no one's allowed to anymore. So it is like, it's not just you that has that experience, for sure. The way that I have landed on this, like where I have settled on this, is that like, I was assigned female at birth, and I have certain feelings around the pronouns she, her, like people calling me that to try to force me into something that I wasn't. And I would not necessarily describe it as traumatic, but I think that there are plenty of people who are in a similar situation where they have had those pronouns used in a traumatic way. And it probably could be either way with he, him pronouns as well. Like, you're actually a boy, I'm going to call you him. And like, that can even be associated with violence in the same way that it pronouns can be associated with violence. But I am not going to tell my trans women friends, like, I'm so sorry. I have like trauma around your pronouns, so I'm going to call you something else, or I'm going to only call you by your name. I don't think that's fair for me to project any of my past or my trauma on someone else. It would be like if I met someone with my dead name and I was like, I'm actually going to call you something else. Like, me having trauma doesn't mean that other people don't get to have their gender validated. And like, I completely am the same with you, as like, maybe part of your journey like isn't the same exactly, but I identified primarily with they, them pronouns for a while. And then after a period of time that has stopped being fitting for me, because now there's this whole idea of what a they is. And like, it just doesn't vibe anymore for me. And I'm not going to like get mad at people for using they pronouns for me, but I do primarily list my pronouns as it's. And it's like, okay, if you are really having a problem with that, I'm not going to like get upset with you for saying they, but like, it isn't honoring my primary pronouns. It isn't like, you aren't seeing me if you aren't acknowledging that as part of the thing, like as part of my gender. There are complex reasons why people end up using its pronouns. And I can understand why people are like, I don't understand why you would want to be called that. I literally made an entire video about it like 2 years ago, so I generally don't try to go into a whole explanation about it now, and especially, you only have a couple minutes here. But I feel bad about the idea that you aren't asking to be affirmed fully, because, or like that you would feel like you shouldn't ask to be affirmed fully because of other people's trauma around it. Like, I don't think in any other situation with trans people that is the acceptable answer. And I just feel like it is so shitty and unfair on people who've landed that it's is the most affirming, that we feel like we have to hedge and we have to say like, oh, it's okay if you don't actually honor my pronouns. Like, how is that any different from like the non-binary person who just came out and hasn't transitioned and is like, well, I do use they pronouns, but it's okay if you still call me she. Like, because it's just, we're trying to avoid conflict and we're trying to avoid putting something on someone else, but it's like we're losing ourselves in the process. So I don't know
Yeah.
that there is a great way to honor other people's trauma. I mean, at a certain point, you just have to say, babe, your trauma is not my responsibility. And if you can't be friends with me, I can't, like, I'm not going to change for you. And I can't fix this problem for you. You know, I personally, I need my friends to be able to handle themselves. I need my friends to be able to handle their own emotions and like not require me to leave part of myself at the door in order to be friends with them.
Woof. Well, thanks.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, I think that's good. Navigating that is going to be, you know, none of this is ever going to be simple. But I appreciate that a lot. Thank you.
We're on the fringe of even the fringe trans group, and it is just, it's going to be hard for a while. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
Oh, there are no maps out here except the ones we draw ourselves.
Yep.
That's right.
All right.
Perfectly said. Well,
Thanks so much, friends. I gotta sign off.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks for calling in.
Thanks for
We
taking my
really
call.
appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Lux, I did not know you went exclusively by its pronouns, and I apologize for every time I've said they.
I'm not pushing it, obviously. Like, I know it's tricky.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things that I used to struggle with it a long time ago. And I don't refuse to use its pronouns when I speak to somebody who identifies with its. But it was something that I had. It's the same thing that you said of like, it's something inside of me and it's something I need to deal with. And it makes me a better person by knowing people like you, Lux. Like, if I wasn't confronted with that trauma in that way to be a better human, I would not be a better human in the process. So I appreciate you for being true to yourself and taking that on, because you're right. It is something that is difficult, and we don't want to see non-binary erasure in any form, right? And so someone who is saying I'm not using that pronoun to me is the same thing of saying you can't wear that dress because it's a part of your expression, right? It's part of who you are, and pronouns to me is a form of expression more than identity. Right? Because it's just how we choose to be heard and seen linguistically. So to refuse somebody that is basically policing their expression. And you know, it's so fundamentally core to who we are as trans people to accept people how they show up in any context. And you know, you taking that on and Fur taking that on and having those tough conversations really does make our community a better place. And it really does. So I thank you for being true to yourself, because it makes us all better. It really does make us all better. Yeah, it's true. And I can't, I get so frustrated by people in the trans community that try to weaponize your expression in this way. It's the same with xenogenders, right? Where they try to weaponize pronouns that go beyond they, them, right? And try to say, see, these people make us look bad. It's like, grow up. Like, you know, it's like they're humans just like all of us. We like just trying to say I'm one of the good ones. So look at Lux, or look at that person who's a xenogender because I'm better than them, right? Is so childish, immature, and just so filthy. I hate it. It makes me so disgusted by it. So I feel for you, and I will always tell any trans person, I'll pull my sister to the side and I'll be like, girl, I know. Like, it sucks that happened to you, but honestly, grow up. Like, you know what I mean? It's like it's something that we have to deal with. It's like, just like people had to learn they, them, People will have to learn how to use it's in their vernacular. So no, thank you.
I think that it's basically the same arguments. I've like gone into it before, and all the arguments people make against xenogenders or against its pronouns, it's just the recycled arguments that people use against non-binary people in general. And we are seeing now that that's like uncouth, unacceptable. And even if you pull it back
Right.
even further, the same arguments are used against binary trans people. So yeah, I think that
Yep.
it's best to just trend toward the what do you call it in politics? The big tent. Like,
Yeah,
you
a
want
big
like
tent.
cover as
Yeah.
many people as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, right? It's like we're all not cis. Like, and that's how I look at it. It's like, and not to look at it so binary, but like in a sense, it's like you're either cis or you're not. And anybody who's not cis and declare that they're not cis belong under that umbrella, regardless
Agreed.
of what that looks like. And to try to push people out into this gray zone that doesn't exist outside of cis and trans is just stupid. It's just that you're not cis and we're all family. That's how it works. Like,
It's not
anyways,
complicated.
somebody will probably,
Yeah.
it's not, right? And, there'll be somebody out there that will be like, Josie doesn't believe that people can switch between cis and not cis. And I'm just like, all right. Like, I'm just like, I don't know what to say to that. But, it's just like, for me, it's one of those things that help me understand. And it helps a lot of people understand. It's like, honey, I'm just not cis. Like, that can we just say that? Like, that's how it goes. But
Just
we'll
keep it
move
cool.
on to super chats. And if you want your super chat read, make sure you donate $5 or more to be able to get your super chat read by either myself or Lux. So I will go ahead and start. £5 from the Mystic Mind Analysis. Why does the entirety of our lived existence boil down to specific cells? Well, it doesn't.
Yeah, great question. Why do
Yeah,
certain people believe that? That's a great question. We should
yeah,
study their brains.
yeah, exactly. They're the brains that need to be studied, not ours. We figured it out. We are very clear.
True. We have a $10 from Alyssa Nguyen. Thank you so much. UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, Article 12 says, children have the right to give their opinions freely on issues that affect them. Adults should listen and take children seriously. I so wish that the UN actually affected anything that happened in America. We're
I
like,
know.
let's ignore international courts right now. Like, I really wish that
Yeah.
their declarations had more of an impact, because yeah, it is true that children are people and they have the right to be listened to. And it just makes me so sad that like so many adults don't remember what it was like to be ignored in that way. Like, do you not remember?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's definitely true. 100%. I wish it had more teeth, but the UN Security Council just ruins everything. $5 from Alyssa. Again, thank you so much. The US is the only UN member state that has not ratified it. Something is very wrong with North Korea, gives more rights than the United States. So that article that was has it been ratified? Wait, what is the it in that? What
I
is
think that,
it's because it's like,
yeah, Article 12, I think, is what Alyssa's talking about.
oh, okay. So
Like,
yeah,
the US was the only
and
state that didn't sign on to it.
it's so embarrassing. It's just embarrassing. Yeah, I don't know what else to say than I'm just embarrassed that we're not signing
True.
on to things that make perfect sense.
Food is not a human right, according to the US. And also, for some
Yeah,
reason, if the US doesn't ratify something, like, we basically have veto power over all of the other countries.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because we're on the Security Council permanently.
Yay.
Yay. And so is China and Russia.
Cool. Yeah. 9.99. Thank you so much from Jason. Says, you made us the line simps proud, Josie. Bring that heat. Fire emoji. Happy pride emojis. And I think you're making progress with Matthew slowly, but the needle might have moved after that torching. We can hope. We can hope that he
We
didn't
can
just
hope.
shut down even further.
I know. I usually don't get spicy like that, but I think in that moment it was warranted. It's like you're being too rigid. Your logic is not being consistent, and that is not a disagreement. That is cognitive dissonance. There's a
Yeah.
difference.
It was like, I think that the thing that was most upsetting about it was that bait and switch of like, we've been trying to have a conversation about listening to children and neurological development and trans kids. And then he's just like, yeah, but I am on the ideological position that trans women aren't women. And it's like 2 hours of wasted time with you. Jesus.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Start there.
Goodness.
$10 from James Rhodes. Hi, I guess not to you, just me. Hi, me, lady.
Only lady. You and Arden.
Only
That's who it's
lady.
for.
Yeah. Yes. Oh yes, Arden is on in the voice in the sky right now. So yes. Yeah, see, there's the other lady right there. Working today, so I can't call to give an update, but I had to say I love Spicy Josie. Sorry people are jerks and Spicy Josie had to be a thing, but hey, she gets my first ever super chat. Yay! Well, thank you, James. I'm happy that you gave it. I'm very happy. Thank you.
Follow up.
Yay!
$5 from James says, OMG, I'm so sorry, Lux. I didn't know you were non-binary. I feel so shameful. I thought I saw you first on Chewed Gum, and I assumed that's my bad. No, I have never been on Chewed Gum. This is the only show on the line that I've been on.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, like, I just don't care that much anymore. Like, I know I have long hair. I know that I appear relatively femme. Like, it's fine. I'm not upset. Thank you for
And James,
apologizing.
honestly, yeah, and James, like we like we're not like, oh my god, we're so fragile, we will break under questioning. Like, it's like it's one of those things that is perfectly fine. And you were technically right because Arden was the voice in the sky. So you were talking to ladies, you were just now you've included Lux, so it works out. So you're completely
Appreciate
fine.
it.
Yeah, we're gonna make a loophole just for you.
Yeah.
$5 for Haley Gringer. I'm so sorry if I pronounced that. This tip is for Spicy Josie. Loving it. Also loving the both of you together. Keep it up, Team Luxosie. I love that.
True. We're a good team for sure.
We really are. I love it.
1999. Thank you so much for from Alice Rosas saying, I have nothing to say or ask this week, so I guess obligatory happy last week of Pride Month. Hope y'all had a great one. Yes. Happy Pride.
Yes.
I like celebrate it and I make a point of saying something like the first week. And then it's like, it might as well not be Pride for the rest of the month because I'm just really forgetful. But no, it is still Pride. Listen.
I know, right? It is, and that's nice. I don't have my little trans. I have a trans one somewhere, but it's in the other room, so I can't be cool. But yeah, I'm actually doing my last Pride event tomorrow. I'm going to New York City for a huge gala in New York. So that's nice. It's fancy. I like fancy.
Mhm. Nice excuse to dress up.
It is. $5 from Jersey Devil. It's Snyder Man from the Love Nest with a surprise cameo. Oh, Jersey Devil. All right, I have to say this. Lux, I don't know if you remember, I had a Twitch show called The Love Nest, and Snyder Man is one of the original birds in the Love Nest, and
Okay.
I am so happy to see you here. It just brightened my whole day. Love you, Jersey Devil. Mwah.
Like the real ones, the ones that have been around for a
The
long
real
time. We love
ones.
that.
Yes.
We have $5 from Alia Shana Silverbow. Love the D&D name, so good. They say the urge to sing "The Lion Sleeps Tonight" just a whim away. It's true. It's only a whim away. A whim away. A whim away.
That's a good one. I love that. I love it.
Solid.
$5 from our Adrian Morgan. Called last week because I didn't have work and had a great time. Fun to see the GNC bathrooms issue is forever ongoing. Ha ha. So true. Always and
Yep,
forever. The zombie laws.
true. Like talk about newfangled things. It's only 8 years old. They want to say that trans care is
Yeah.
brand new, but like your stupid bathroom bills are only 8 years old. Get out of my face.
Yeah, I know.
$5 again from Alyssa Nguyen. Thank you so much. Says I meant the UNCRC as a whole, not just Article 12. Oh, so there's an entire
Okay.
thing that we haven't ratified. Considering,
Yeah.
sorry, with all international agreements, POTUS/U.S. ambassador, et cetera, signs, and then the Senate ratifies. Love this country. So good.
Yes. Yes, that makes sense. And that is the United Nations Convention of Rights of the Child. So
Mhm.
that's what that is. Okay. Well, thank you so much for that clarification. Always learning when Alyssa does super chats. Love it. $9.99 from JW Edgy. Thanks so much for taking my call. It was very validating. I have a great day. Everyone hit like on the stream. Chase from Cali. Thank you, Chase. You are awesome. Live your truth. Find a group of trans people and go be pretty, because I know it's true.
True. Yes. Appreciate you, Chase. $9.99 from Jamnik06 says, IMHO, the call with Matthew wasn't a waste of time. Yes, he danced around the heart of the issue, but y'all covered a lot of ground. I learned a lot as usual. That's always the thing.
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
The thing about the atheist experience back in the day and about the line now is like, it's not even about changing that person's mind. It's about all the people in the audience who are on the fence or who don't know what they think yet, or like who are trying to refine their arguments. The purpose of debate is not to convince the other person, because obviously you're entrenched in your ideas and you have like a vested interest in not changing your mind during a debate. So yeah, so glad that y'all felt that was a beneficial conversation, because I found it frustrating.
It was very frustrating, but you know what? It's absolutely true, because we took it in good faith. There's a lot of people who do that tactic where they start with some like weird thing on the side, and then you start doing an investigation, and then you start doing the groundwork, and all of a sudden you hit granite, and you're like,
Mhm.
what the hell? We were doing so much work, and now we're hitting granite, we're hitting stone, where we're hitting impasse where we can no longer do any good. And it really does show that a lot of times when people come from certain places, they're actually fundamentally, the basis of the reason why they're asking questions is just dirt that is covering the big problem, which is the fundamental belief that trans women aren't women, or trans
Mhm.
men aren't men, or non-binary people exist, right? Like the whole reality was all buried under this fakeness. And then once we cleaned all of that away, we hit the bedrock, and that takes a lot of work to chip through. And I hope Matthew calls in again, because if we start there, maybe we can start hearing out those arguments. And it was also at 45 minutes or 40, or it was like at the 40-minute mark at that call that we got to that point. So it was
Right.
like one of those things where it was just like, oh my gosh, we hit bedrock, and now we don't have time because we have other amazing humans that need to make the calls, because we want to make sure we're
Yeah.
inclusive, that people can be on the line. That's what this is about, hearing in calls from many people. So if we start with Matthew, if you're listening right now, know that I got spicy, but I am ready to start chiseling through that bedrock and actually start getting to some real change and start alleviating that cognitive dissonance that you have, which is the fact that gender and sex are different. We have to get through that part, and that's where the bedrock is.
Imagine if we start there.
I know, right?
Yeah. $10 from Sapphic Bibliophile says, I'm hoping for advice on how I can support my transmasculine partner when there are customers in our red county at his job who refuse to be served by him. He brushes it off, but I can see that it gets under his skin. Yeah, I don't know that there is like a good, concise answer to that, aside from just like just being there for your partner, letting them vent their frustrations, vent his frustrations, and like, reaffirm like his identity in your private space. And like Josie was saying, to the extent that it's possible, like finding other places that you can go be in person or even online where you're going to be around people who are supporting the identity, because like, yeah, there's not so much you can do aside from just like get out of customer service. Listen, I did my transition while in a customer service role and it is not fun. And like, you just have to decide that it's not worth it, or like either decide that it's worth it and you're going to correct people on the pronouns, or that like you're going to push the issue, or like just go hands off with it. You know, I don't know that there is any one correct answer. Yeah, just like try to make the time outside of work as easy as possible, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. That's I can't agree more with that. Well, that is our show. Look at us. We got a lot in this short time
True.
today. Like we really got to get some good stuff, and I think this was a great show. Oh, we got one more super chat from Alyssa. And what I said about the CRC applies to the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEWAW2 also. So that's unfortunate. So not only are we not ratifying children, we're also not ratifying discrimination against women. Fun.
Woo!
Woo, America! Yay! What is this? It's like, woo, America!
Oh, geez.
Oh my goodness. So anyways, Lux, so we're gonna be, I think I'm gonna be missing one show next week, I think, this month coming up in July. But I will be here next week. It's like, you know, this dynamic duo that we have going on right now, I think we're making some really, really strong growth in our community here. So if you have not hit the like button, shame on you. And I will unshame you as soon as you hit like. Okay, so it's not a permanent shame, it's a temporary one. And if you haven't at least looked at the Patreon to see what we have to offer, then again, another shame. I have a lot of shame today. You know, you wanted spicy Josie, here she is. The whole spice rack. But no, yes, we have other shows on the line. Make sure you check in and see what else there is to offer. There's so many great shows. I mean, the calls are spicy, the calls are great, and you're definitely going to learn something. Probably learn something today. I even learned something from Lex today about the pronoun thing. So I mean, I feel more complete and whole coming out of this. So I'm sure you all must feel great. I love that so much. But anyways, Lex, where can people find you? You've mentioned it a couple times.
Yeah, so I have my main channel, which is at Luxander Real. I stream on Wednesday evenings and Sundays at noon Central Time. I also have my little second channel where I'm sharing stuff about, like, I'm learning how to go fishing, and like I'm going to start hunting soon. And I have my little community garden. That one's called At One Oasis Left. And I'm much interested in growing that channel. So, you know, much love to anybody who wants to follow up on that. I will say, coming up this week on Sunday, there's a 2 p.m. and a 7 p.m. show. The first one has Matt Dillahunty and Jimmy Snow is actually going to be co-hosting. So if any of you have been missing him, he's going to be back. The 7 p.m. After Dark show, we have Aron Ra and Aron A. And then Monday, we have Skep Talk with, again, Aron Ra and Aron A. Tuesday is going to be Chewed Gum with Eve WF and Alyssa Ljub. And then Wednesday, it's the THUP show with Matt Dillahunty. And then, of course, Takis again on Thursday with, I think next week we're looking at Arden and Josie. So feel free to tune in, everybody. Make sure you've got your notification bell clicked. Subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, right. I will be seeing you again sometime in July sometime.
Yeah, exactly. I love this part of the show because you hear that great music. I see all the cool people on Patreon. Like, you do realize that it doesn't take much to get on this list. but these are the cool people. We got to do a little dance and one for them. This list is getting long. Look at this. It's like actually getting longer and longer. Let's make it keep going. I love that because then you get to see me.